Well, hello, I'm back here with Caitlin, and we've got a discussion of long COVID treatment, which will probably get us banned on YouTube again. But before that, Caitlin's got information about Mastodon.
Yes, Mastodon. So the Indian Express has an article by Bloomberg. So this is one news agency sort of deflecting off another. Let me see if I can't share this. There we go. And so there is a social media network called Mastodon. And after everything that's been going down with Twitter, so for people that don't know, Elon Musk has taken over Twitter and it has become sort of a hotbed for right-wing politics right now. And people are sort of looking for alternatives. And one of the things that I said on Twitter was, hey, I really hope that if we do go to somewhere new, it's going to be open source, and funded by donations, and we don't have any more of this like corporate nonsense going on in the future. And it turns out, yeah, that's exactly what people are going for. It's a social media network, an open source social media network that's been out for a few years now, but hasn't really gained traction. But now people are just going off to Mastodon in huge droves. Twitter numbers are falling, and Mastodon's numbers are growing greatly. So that may be the future of social networks, is not having these single companies in charge of these large social networks, but instead have these social networks be a community project, an open source community project. And by the way, the source code for Mastodon was used in other social media networks that cropped up in the wake of like Donald Trump being banned on Twitter. So like, what's it called, like Freedom Network and stuff.
Truth Social, I think.
Truth Social, yeah. That used the source code from this too as well. It really is based off of Twitter. In fact, they called their messages toots.
Yes.
So, but it's open source and it's not controlled by any one company and it's not for profit. So.
Right. And therefore I think it'll be worthless. And that seems to be what a lot of people say. The problem is nobody is paying for run one server. So you join a server and you only see the people on that server. They say it's hard to subscribe to stuff from another server, and there isn't a central one. So it fragments your community into little pieces.
Right. Well, we'll see how things
Yeah.
progress, because this really would be ideal if we could get an open source social media network that average people could use. It's not just for tech people. It's easy to use, free, and it's just something out there for enthusiasts and people that want to use social media without having all this corporate baggage, like corporate takeovers by ridiculous people.
Well, I think realistically it's going to be like Open Office versus Microsoft Office. You've got the corporate solution that's easy to use, and you got the tech geeky solution that's hard to use, that's only for highly technical people, which is what people are saying. People are complaining a lot about Mastodon. And by the way, Elon Musk just posted a chart saying Twitter use is in fact up at higher than ever.
Really?
Which I think what it means is the angry liberals who is left are more than compensated for by all the right wingers that are coming back, and the right wingers are flooding in. So,
well, okay then. Well, that's just going to tell you what Twitter's going to be like. So if you like anti-Semitism, Twitter may be your choice of social network in the future.
Well, originally, I think the plan was to sell anti-Semitic and Republican ads and make money that way. But now the plan is to sell porn. He's going after YouPorn and YouTube. He thinks he's going to make money by having video on Twitter, which seems highly ambitious to me. He's going to have to exceed YouTube's recommendation engine. And there's already, I didn't know this, but there's already discussion about this. People who are on YouTube get paid 55% of the ad revenue. And Elon says he can beat that. And I highly doubt that, because the ad revenue on Twitter is zero. So even getting 90% of that is still not going to beat 55% of what you were getting on YouTube, I think.
Right.
But we will see. Anyway, at the moment, he claims the actual number of users has gone up, but supposedly the goal of all this is to achieve Truth, the most reliable platform in the world for news, by having Twitter comments. There's something called Bird Watch, where you can comment on whether you think of something someone says is true or not. And he thinks the crowd of people voting on whether they like something or not is the best way to determine absolute truth, because the wisdom of crowds, all the Twitter users together, will add up to a giant hive mind, which is smarter than people.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I know. I know. This sounds just mind-numbingly stupid. And I it just seems to be blowing the myth that these tech entrepreneurs are like super geniuses, master races. In fact, they're just sort of complete science fiction nerds that started one thing that turned into a hit, and they're otherwise just sort of idiots. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. He's got his whole gang of his billionaire buddies that are going to revolutionize Twitter and make a pile of money, or at least they're flattering him to say so.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessary to leave. I think they'll just give up and leave pretty soon. Actually, I think he'll swim around for a year or so trying to make money. Finally, admit he can't make any money and just sell it to Yahoo or something, and it'll go back to what it was. Or maybe Jack again. Jack is already apologizing, watching what's happening to Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any particular interest in Twitter as a social media network. I would personally just love to move to an open source network, if that's possible.
Well, if you move to an open source network, it'll be like what it was in the really early days. I mean, it'd be just where nothing but technical people, which might be fine. It'll just be technocrats like PGP encrypted email. It'd be only the nerdiest of the nerds there.
Right. But, I would assume since it's an open source project, there won't be like many Nazis and stuff on the platform, which would be nice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Or any normal people. You'll just be a meeting of technical people, sort of like RSS feeds or things like that.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
we'll see.
That's not
Realistically,
too bad.
Though, I think Twitter will just continue the way it always has. It'll just never make any money, and it'll be run as a minor project. Anyway, we're gonna see. So the Register has an article by Tobias Mann about something I was not aware of. In order for AI to run, you need much more powerful processors, and those exist, but they put out much more heat. And the original standard was apparently 10 kilowatts per rack, and now they're going up to like 50 kilowatts per rack. So cooling the racks is very difficult. So the new solution, which is being employed, is direct-to-chip liquid cooling. So I'd like to see the hydraulics of that, but apparently they pump some kind of coolant right down to the chips and down to the back. Then they cool the whole rack with a radiator, like on the front of a car, and a big fan there. And they say the end result is it uses much less energy, and they can cram many more servers in the same rack space and have much more total power and cooling there. So that does seem to be the way of the future.
What I'm surprised is that it's not dry water. So one of the coolest new substances created in the last decade or so was this stuff called dry water. And it's not water at all. You can't drink it. It's a chemical, but it has the same sort of thermal properties of water, and you can just dunk electronics in it, and you don't even have to have complex, tubing or anything like that to keep the
oil or something. Yeah,
it's not. It has the consistency of water, so it's not oil. The chemical name escapes me right now, but it's called dry water by 3M.
Well, that might be what they're using. They say direct liquid cooling.
Immersion cooling. So basically what they do, so let me actually share my screen.
Yeah.
It's called immersion cooling. So basically what they do is instead of, and you can see a picture here of the bubbles rising off the chip directly.
So it boils the stuff.
Yeah. And then it can condense back down.
That's a really good idea because phase transitions really maintain a temperature and absorb a lot of power.
Yeah, and you see the way it works is that you have your CPU and stuff and your servers inside a giant tank with this liquid. So you don't even have to have any complex, systems of tubing like traditional water cooling. You just dump the whole thing in, everything gets cooled, and then you can of course pump the hot water, the hot dry water into a radiator and then back into the system.
Well, that sounds like what they're using here. They don't say it's water, they say it's coolant.
And it is coolant, yes.
And they don't explain exactly how it works. That might be what this is. Anyway, it's news to me. It's apparently the new hotness, so to speak. So, all right, you've got AR.
Actually, let's do that one last.
Okay.
Let's skip ahead because this sort of ties into your last story. So Tech Explorer has an article written by Han Kokkegaard at the Technical University of Denmark. And there are people, experts, quote unquote experts, advocating that instead of trying just to get rid of waste heat from servers, like we were talking about, we use that heat, we pump it back into people's homes. So because it really is a waste, because trying just to get rid of heat when people need that heat for other things is sort of silly. Computers are great heat generating machines. That in fact, computers are 100% effective or efficient, I should say, if you use the heat for something else. So the idea is that data centers, like small and medium data centers, would then pump their heat out into people's homes. And I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Yeah, sure. Not to avoid the waste. Of course, nothing is ever 100% efficient, but I understand your point.
No, it is. I mean, okay, so when you talk about inefficiencies in electronics, you're talking about waste heat.
That's right. And some of the heat is used, for example, to do the computing. And
right.
some of it is used to perform chemical irreversible degradation of the wires and stuff. Therefore, there's no 100% anywhere.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. I mean,
yeah. And also, by the way, if you had a heat pump, then you would move many more calories than you expend in the electricity. So it's not the most efficient way to get heat from electricity, but it certainly is wasted heat that you might as well put to a purpose.
Right. I mean, when you talk about like 20% efficiency, they're talking about it just going off as heat. Right. But of course, if you use the heat, then it just jumps up to like 99% efficiency.
That's right. Yeah.
I have the same issue with space heaters that talk about their efficiency. Mm-hmm. Every space heater, even if it uses like 2 kilowatts of power, if it uses 50 kilowatts, is like nearly 100% efficient because.
Well, you do lose half the power in transmitting it from the power plant. That's why, they're
which also once again comes off as heat. But you're right, it's heat in the wrong place. If it's in the power line. But like even the fan turning, it's not 100% efficient, but that inefficiency is once again heat, which is what you're trying to generate. So
yeah, well, realistically, you want to compare it to alternatives. And the best thing, what we should all be using is heat pumps, which would give you something like 3 or 4 times the amount of heat per unit energy consumed. But we're not. All right. Anyway, so there's this new thing called confidential computing. At the Register by Jessica Hardcastle. I had not heard of this, but in an iPhone, there is a thing called a secure element. And in a Windows machine, there's a trusted platform module. And that is a hardware device that has a place to store your encryption keys and to do certain cryptographic operations. And the problem is those don't make you secure enough to resist the modern crypto heists in the cross-platform systems, because you can just request that module to sign a transaction. So what they're doing now, which sounds to me like an implementation of zero trust computing, is they're making confidential computing modules on the servers that are independent, that do operations, and I see. I wondered what you were chasing. You've captured your wild beast. Your beast is less wild.
She is very curious about what's going on over here.
Well, and she's not like hiding from you or anything.
No, she is learning to enjoy the privileged, spoiled life for some reason. So this cat was feral a week ago. Yeah, living on the streets, eating garbage.
I thought you'd be able to pet her in years, if ever.
No, she's adjusting. She's getting like fancy feasts and everything. Like I'm spoiling her.
You have managed to domesticate your beast in record time.
Yes. Yeah, no, she's doing great. So
well, congratulations. Anyway, this confidential computing then has multiple servers that operate independently, keeping the whole processing separate from the machines around them. And then you make like 5 of the 7 of them vote to authorize a transaction. And the idea is that should be much more secure. And apparently a lot of cloud services are in fact going to this. So it sounds like just another layer of air gaps and zero trust, which is what they've said, the NIST has said we all should be going towards. So it strikes me a lot like when I first heard about the modern solution for APTs, just mindless complexity, likely to make a lot of trouble and not work, but that's where we're going. So, all right. And now you want to talk about AR?
Yeah. So, Meta has been trying to push VR and AR. But it's not going well for them. And if any company has a chance to make it go mainstream, it's Apple. And Apple is saying, well, we're working on our own AR, VR glasses, but we're having some troubles, as you can imagine. And now it looks like their AR glasses are now being pushed back preliminarily initially to at least 2025 or 2026. So this is an article from MarketWatch by James Rogers. And yeah, so yeah, Apple is just having a hard time getting their AR glasses to work the way they want them to. They are putting a bunch of research into it, but even still, it just shows you that, VR is this great technology, but it's really not ready for the masses yet. And Meta jumped the gun. I mean, they knew that VR and AR has a future. It absolutely does. And they want to be on the ground floor. But the foundation hasn't been laid yet. And that's the big problem. And the foundation is more complex than people imagine. It's not just the first person to get there. It's the first person to make VR accessible and cool and easy to use and not have to hang stuff up on the wall. You have to have inside out tracking that works flawlessly. It has to be cheap and comfortable. And these things just aren't there yet. People get headaches. It feels like wearing a box on your face. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing and everyone should use it and it's cool, but it is just not ready for mainstream. And Apple's having the same issue. They cannot get their stuff to market in any quick time frame.
Well, and this is why I have high hopes on Apple, because Apple has a real focus on end user usability. They understand that you want something that looks good, that is comfortable, that will fit into your life. I think they're the only company that knows how to make wearables that people might actually use.
Yeah, I think Apple has a chance to make this stuff very mainstream.
Yeah.
And I think most people will be very pleasant when someone actually creates a, VR or AR headset that is enjoyable to use, because it really is just absolutely an amazing experience. But it's just such all the options on the market right now are either, sort of very compromised or huge boxes.
Yeah, well, I think this is the basic difference between Microsoft and Apple. Microsoft has no problem making something that is unpleasant to use because they think your boss is forcing you to do it. And Apple understands they want to make something that you actually want to use because it's nice and pleasant.
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm glad they're putting it off, because nobody else has come close to cracking that nut yet. They're not willing to try to sell a product that is uncomfortable and nasty. They're not going to sell it until they actually have something that's good.
Well, what makes this interesting is that people are very close to cracking the nut. Like the Valve Index headset. I mean, it's a great headset, but it is not perfection. It reminds me of the whole issue with the Uncanny Valley, where you can kind of get close, but as you get really close, the perceptions, people get turned away, and and if you want to do something close to reality, you need to get it almost perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what we really need for VR to go mainstream. We can't have this sort of really good VR. We need sort of like perfect.
Zuckerberg's metaverse with no legs and cartoony people.
Right.
That's not good enough.
And in fact, the reason why there are cartoony people is because of the Uncanny Valley. They don't want people freaked out by
strangely mutated, distorted. Yeah.
Just somewhat off people. It's much better to look at cartoons than, especially on low end hardware. But yeah, I mean that's the big problem. They need a perfect product, but that product doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, I have another thing I'm looking forward to is Apple's electric car. In this, by the same token, I expect them to make a really good one, but they haven't got it out yet. Anyway, the last one, which is the one I thought was the most important, is long COVID treatment. A U.S.-Israeli study has apparently found an effective treatment to relieve the symptoms of long COVID. And they had 3,000 participants, and they tried a lot of different long COVID symptoms, and they claim they have something like 70 or 80% effectiveness at reducing the symptoms with something they call nutraceutical formulation, which sounds kind of like a vitamin compound. Really, it's just got stuff in it like zinc and here it is, zinc, vitamin D, St. John's wort, and stuff like that. It's really just sort of like what you get at a health food store, and they say apparently it's quite effective. So that's probably why they're able to jump right to human trials. They're not using any new drug. They're just using common nutritional supplements, but they claim to have found one that actually helps long COVID. So it might be the usual marketing nonsense where they're just lying, but they sound like pretty serious researchers, and I hope it's true. It would be nice. The only other treatment I've even heard in trials for long COVID is they're trying to give people 15 days of Paxlovid in the hopes that that'll treat long COVID, and we'll see if that works. But anyway, there's hope there'll be treatment for long COVID, which suits me. That's the main thing that worries me about COVID is the long COVID. Although the evidence that it does permanent damage to your liver and kidneys and heart and brain and everything just keeps growing. So, and we're heading into winter where there'll probably be another spike in COVID. So I'm watching these treatments with great interest and hoping they improve them. Anyway, I think that's it for this one. And we'll be back on Friday.
Please don't ban us, YouTube.
Don't what?
Don't ban us, YouTube.
Oh, well, I bet they're more likely to ban us than ever for saying that. I don't think anybody knows what's going on with YouTube. They might, though, but this new European law say they're going to have to release their algorithms for things. So they might eventually at least have to tell us why they're banning people. Anyway.